A watch worth over $20 million. A watch with a spinning miniature solar system. A watch powered by a tiny mechanical engine inspired by a Bugatti hypercar. To some people, these are masterpieces of modern engineering. To others, they're nothing more than expensive toys designed to attract attention. Few brands divide opinion quite like Jacob and Company. Some collectors refuse to consider it true haute horlogerie. Others believe it has pushed mechanical watchmaking further than almost anyone else in the 21st century. So, how did one company become the most controversial name in luxury watches? The answer begins with a simple truth. For centuries, luxury watches followed the same unwritten rules. They were elegant, restrained, timeless. A great watch wasn't supposed to shout. It whispered. Brands like Patek Philippe, Vacheron Constantin, and Breguet built their reputations on refinement. Their watches were admired not because everyone noticed them, but because those who understood watchmaking recognized their craftsmanship. Luxury was quiet. Then Jacob and Company arrived and ignored every single one of those rules. Instead of making watches disappear beneath a shirt cuff, Jacob and Company wanted them to dominate an entire room. Instead of hiding the movement beneath a traditional dial, it exposed every gear, every bridge, and every rotating mechanism. Instead of celebrating centuries of tradition, it asked a far more provocative question. What if a watch became a performance? That single idea changed everything. To understand why Jacob and Company is so different, you first have to understand the man behind it. Unlike many famous Swiss watchmakers, Jacob Arabo didn't grow up surrounded by generations of horological tradition. He was born in Uzbekistan before moving to the United States with his family at a young age. New York became his classroom. Jewelry became his language. While many future watchmakers were studying escapements and balance wheels, Jacob was learning something entirely different. He was learning how people expressed success. As a teenager, he worked as a jeweler, creating custom pieces for clients who wanted something no one else owned. It wasn't long before celebrities began knocking on his door. Rappers, athletes, actors, musicians, people whose careers depended on standing out rather than blending in. Jacob understood something that much of the luxury industry had overlooked. A new generation of wealthy clients wasn't interested in quiet elegance. They wanted individuality. They wanted attention. And they weren't afraid to show it. That philosophy quickly earned him a nickname, the jeweler to the stars. By the late 1990s, Jacob Arabo had become one of the most recognizable names in celebrity jewelry. Most entrepreneurs would have been satisfied. Jacob wasn't. Jewelry had limits. Watches didn't. At the time, the luxury watch industry, was dominated by heritage. The biggest names proudly reminded customers that they had existed for more than 100 years. Every advertisement celebrated history. Every collection honored tradition. Every design evolved carefully over decades. Jacob looked at the industry and saw something different. He saw an opportunity. Instead of competing with brands that had already perfected classical watchmaking, he would create something those brands would never dare to build. His watches wouldn't simply tell time. They would tell stories. When Jacob and Company officially entered high-end watchmaking, many collectors dismissed it almost immediately. The company had no centuries-old manufacture, no legendary archives, no iconic dress watch. To traditional enthusiasts, it looked like a jewelry company pretending to make watches. At first glance, they weren't entirely wrong. Jacob and Company did come from jewelry. Its earliest designs featured diamonds, bold cases, and extravagant styling. Compared to the understated elegance of traditional Swiss watches, they seemed almost rebellious. Critics accused the company of sacrificing craftsmanship for spectacle. But something unexpected began happening behind the scenes. Jacob wasn't investing only in gemstones. He was investing in engineers, movement designers, master watchmakers, technical specialists capable of building mechanisms that many believed were impossible. The company's ambition had quietly grown far beyond decoration. Its goal was no longer to create beautiful watches. Its goal was to create watches that no one had ever imagined. That ambition became impossible to ignore with the release of one extraordinary collection, Astronomie. Even today, years after its debut, Astronomie doesn't look like a conventional wristwatch. It looks like a miniature universe trapped beneath sapphire crystal. Instead of a flat dial, the entire movement rotates. A three-dimensional globe slowly spins. A flying tourbillon circles the center. In some versions, a diamond rotates like a tiny planet reflecting light in every direction. At first glance, it appears almost impossible. Many people assume these moving parts exist purely to impress wealthy buyers. But the reality is far more complicated. Creating a movement that continuously rotates multiple components while maintaining precision is an enormous engineering challenge. Every additional moving element increases complexity. Every increase in complexity creates more opportunities for tiny errors. And in mechanical watchmaking, tiny errors matter. Watchmakers spend years improving accuracy by fractions of a second. Jacob and Company willingly introduced mechanisms that made this challenge even harder. Why? Because the company wasn't chasing simplicity. It was chasing wonder. That philosophy would become the foundation of every major creation that followed. Then came another surprise. Instead of becoming more conservative after gaining recognition, Jacob and Company became even bolder. It introduced musical watches, mechanical roulette tables, multi-axis tourbillons, even watches inspired by high-performance sports cars. Each release seemed less interested in competing with Rolex or Patek Philippe, and more interested in redefining what a mechanical watch could actually be. For some collectors, this was exciting. For others, it felt almost offensive. Could something this dramatic still be considered haute horlogerie? Or had Jacob and Company crossed the line between engineering and entertainment? That question would divide the watch community for years. And with every new creation, the debate only became louder. If Astronomia proved that Jacob and Company could build something extraordinary, the next challenge was even bigger. Could the company create complications so ambitious that even experienced watchmakers would stop and stare? Most luxury brands improve existing ideas. A thinner movement, a longer power reserve, a more accurate escapement. Jacob and Company took a completely different path. It asked impossible questions. What if a mechanical watch could recreate the motion of a real engine? What if it could play music? What if it could become an entire amusement park on your wrist? To traditional watchmakers, these ideas sounded almost ridiculous. But Jacob and Company wasn't trying to build another elegant dress watch. It was trying to redefine what mechanical art could become. That ambition reached a new level when the company partnered with Bugatti. At first glance, the collaboration seemed obvious. Both brands were expensive. Both built products for an extremely wealthy clientele. Both represented exclusivity. But beneath the marketing, something far more interesting was happening. Bugatti engineers obsessed over making every component perform at the highest possible level. Jacob and Company wanted to apply that same philosophy to watchmaking. The result was unlike anything the industry had ever seen. The Bugatti Chiron. Instead of simply decorating the dial with automotive styling, the watch contained a miniature mechanical engine. Tiny pistons moved up and down. A crankshaft rotated. The entire animation looked remarkably similar to the famous W16 engine found inside the Bugatti Chiron. It served almost no practical purpose. It didn't improve accuracy. It didn't increase reliability. It simply existed because it could. And somehow, that made it unforgettable. This perfectly captured Jacob & Co.'s philosophy. Luxury doesn't always have to be practical. Sometimes, its greatest purpose is to inspire amazement. Of course, engineering miracles like these come at an enormous cost. Every unusual complication requires years of research. Every new mechanism demands countless prototypes. Every tiny moving part must be manufactured, assembled, and adjusted by hand. Unlike mass-produced products, there is no efficient shortcut. When collectors see a seven-figure price tag, they often focus on the diamonds. But master watchmakers usually notice something else: the movement. Because hidden beneath the gemstones is an extraordinary amount of mechanical innovation. Take the Twin Turbo Furious. The name alone sounds dramatic, but behind it lies one of the most technically ambitious wristwatches ever attempted. Twin triple-axis tourbillons, a decimal minute repeater, a mono-pusher chronograph, a highly complex mechanical architecture containing hundreds of precisely engineered components. Creating a movement like this isn't simply difficult. It's one of the hardest challenges in modern watchmaking. Even brands with centuries of experience rarely attempt projects of this complexity. This is where Jacob and Company begins to surprise even its harshest critics. Many people assume the company focuses only on appearance. But some of its watches represent genuine achievements in Haute Horlogerie. That doesn't mean every collector suddenly becomes a fan. Far from it. Because Jacob and Company challenges something much deeper than design. It challenges the very definition of luxury itself. For decades, collectors associated prestige with restraint. The greatest watches weren't necessarily the loudest. They were admired quietly. A slim Patek Philippe, a vintage Vacheron Constantin, an unstated A. Lange and Sonnet. These watches rewarded knowledge rather than attention. Jacob and Company completely reversed that philosophy. Its watches demand attention. They sparkle, rotate, move, perform. They don't wait to be discovered. They introduce themselves immediately. To some enthusiasts, that's exactly the problem. Critics argue that true luxury should never feel like a performance. That elegance should remain timeless rather than theatrical. They believe Jacob and Company places spectacle above subtlety. Supporters see the situation very differently. They argue that innovation has always faced resistance. When Royal Oak appeared in 1972, many collectors hated it. When Richard Mille introduced futuristic, tonneau-shaped cases, critics dismissed them as oversized toys. Today, both are celebrated as icons. Perhaps every generation needs a brand willing to challenge accepted ideas. Whether Jacob and Company ultimately joins that list remains a matter of opinion. But one fact is impossible to deny. People never stop talking about it. And that may be the company's greatest competitive advantage. Because in today's luxury market, attention is one of the rarest resources of all. Jacob and Company understands this better than almost anyone. Its collaborations aren't random. Bugatti, Aston Martin, Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, global celebrities whose lives are already associated with excellence and exclusivity. Each partnership reinforces the same message. These watches aren't designed to disappear beneath a sleeve. They're designed to become part of a larger story. A story about ambition, performance, success, and individuality. That's why Jacob and Company rarely competes directly with Rolex or Patek Philippe. Its customers often already own those watches. What they're looking for next isn't another classic. They're looking for something impossible to ignore. In many ways, Jacob and Company isn't selling timepieces. It's selling conversation. Walk into a room wearing a traditional dress watch and only experienced collectors may notice it. Walk into that same room wearing an Astronomia or a Bugatti Chiron Tourbillon, and almost everyone notices. Whether they admire it or question it, the conversation begins. That is not an accident. It's the product. So, why is Jacob and Company so controversial? Because it broke nearly every rule that defined luxury watchmaking. It replaced restraint with spectacle, tradition with experimentation, silence with attention. Some collectors will always reject that approach. Others will celebrate it. But perhaps that was never the point. Jacob and Company never set out to become another Patek Philippe or another Rolex. It set out to create something the watch industry had never seen before. And in doing so, it forced an uncomfortable question upon the entire world of Haute Horlogerie. Does true luxury come from preserving tradition, or from having the courage to reinvent it? Whether you see Jacob and Company as a masterpiece of engineering, a masterclass in branding, or simply the most extravagant watchmaker on earth, its impact is undeniable. Because long after people forget the price, they remember how it made them feel. Surprised, curious, inspired, or even shocked. And perhaps that's the greatest luxury of all. Not owning something expensive, but owning something unforgettable.